Good afternoon and welcome to Fridays with Friends. My name is Victoria Sexton with Coast to Coast Legal Aid. Today I am joined by Paul Daquith, President and CEO of Mental Health America of Southeast Florida and a Florida Initiative for Suicide Prevention. Thanks for joining us today, Paul.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Good to see you, Victoria.
All right, we're going to go ahead and just dive right in because we're going to be talking about both organizations today. So can you give everyone who may not be familiar with your organizations a little bit of information about the mission?
Okay. Mental Health America of Southeast Florida has been around since 1957, and we provide services throughout Broward County. It's really support services. Some of you may be familiar with our art center, which is called the Nine Muses Art Center, which provides it's a drop-in center for adults over the age of 18 for people with a diagnosed mental illness. And for no fee, they can come in and utilize those services. And it runs 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday, and they can partake in it. Really, the real important part of that is that it's for the connection to other human beings, because a lot of people with a mental illness oftentimes are very isolated and have no social connection. And of course, with the pandemic, it's become even worse. But so we really believe in it, that the social connectedness is really a curative part of people's recovery. And we work with other organizations. So we don't provide therapy. We're not clinicians. We work with like Henderson or Broward Health, Chrysalis, any of the other the big providers in the community will oftentimes send people to us to partake in our art center. In addition to that, we are actively involved in parenting services. We have a kinship program. I think I'm not talking about the mission as much as the services, but it's all the same thing. So the parenting services include kinship, which is for those families who found themselves in the position where where typically grandparents are now caring for their grandchildren for a variety of reasons. And this would be particularly germane, I think, to the legal community, because as a grandparent, if you try to enroll your grandchild in school or take them to the pediatrician, you can't do it. You don't have legal authority to do it unless you've already obtained it. So we work with those families to help them navigate the system. We work with legal aid to get them free services so that they can coordinate all those services. We also give them a respite. Oftentimes grandparents, they're like, I'm done. Now here I am back taking care of an 8 and 10 and a 6-year-old. And it's a lot for grandparents to take on, but it doesn't have to be a grandparent. It typically is. And so, it's a pretty extensive program. We also work with parents who are in danger of losing their children to the foster care system. So we do education with them on proper parenting. We have an observation room. We do observations with parents to watch them interact with their children anywhere from 0 to 18 and give them feedback so that, theoretically, you don't want a kid to be taken from a biological family if you can avoid it. So we believe in that and we try to work with that. In addition, we do mentoring with kids in schools, young kids, where we pair them with an adult mentor in the schools, and we train them. And then we provide education to other professionals. Recently, Florida Initiative for Suicide Prevention, also known as FISP, joined our services because their executive director, Jackie Rosen, retired. So they merged with us about 6 months ago. And so those services come under us. So Florida Initiative for Suicide Prevention was started as a grassroots organization when Jackie and her husband, along with some other folks who had lost their children due to suicide, decided to start a support system. And that's what it is. We don't provide clinical intervention for someone who's actively suicidal. However, we can connect people. What we do provide is for the survivors of suicide. In other words, parents, family members, friends, colleagues, what have you, who have been impacted by the death of someone by suicide. So we have active survivor groups now that are throughout Broward County and in Miami-Dade. And we also work with the schools, the high schools, with Hope Sunshine Clubs. We work on a peer basis to work with kids and connect them to other kids in the schools, not necessarily on suicide, but around things like trauma, loss, bereavement, There may be issues with suicide and so on, but we're very well involved in the schools throughout Broward County, as well as providing education to organizations, schools. We do a lot of work with schools, the PTAs, and providing suicide prevention education throughout Broward County. So in about a 4-minute capsule, that's pretty much all of our services that we provide.
And that's a lot. So I kind of want to break it down a little bit, Paul. So as far as the services you were talking about with the art center, the educational services, and the kinship program, how would somebody get involved or in touch with you in order to apply for those services? And are there any parameters around them?
Okay, so I mean, they all have different parameters, but typically, for example, the art center is 18 or above.
Okay.
Other than that, it's, and if someone has had a mental illness diagnosis, even if it's years ago, they can come in and it's free. It costs them nothing. It's just a phone call. I did put in the chat our phone number, but I'll put it out there again, 954-746-2055. But it's in the chat so that you will have that information. You can also go on our website at www.mhasefl.org. I know it's a mouthful, but again, it's in the chat and you can get more information. You can also go to the 9muses.org link and look that up too, and it'll tell you more about that. The process is not a process. There's no intake. We don't put people through, hours and hours of evaluations and assessment. We don't do any of those things. So we don't need to, because we are a drop-in center. For the parenting services, it's a little more complicated, and depending on which service you are requesting, like kinship, obviously you have to be in a kinship relationship, right? For parents who are in need of dealing with parenting education issues, we do have some private pay people that come in, but most of them come through ChildNet referrals. Okay. So we have contracts with ChildNet, Children's Services Council, Broward Behavioral Health Coalition, and Broward County. So those are our 4 major funders. So we have certain requirements depending on what they need to do, and depending on the program. But suffice to say, if you have any interest in any of those programs, if you call the main number, 954-746-2055, you can get more information, and we certainly will help with that. I can promise you it's not a very involved or complicated process at all. We do surveys all the time, and no one's ever complained, oh my God, that intake process was like, I can't keep telling my story over and over again. So it's pretty simple. FISP is the same thing. It's just a call to the phone number. The FISP number is the same as what it was before. We did not change their number. Their phone number is 954-384-0344. Again, that's in the chat, along with their website information is there as well. And again, there's not a whole intake process. We might just ask questions about why you're calling. We get a lot of calls from family members who've lost someone due to suicide. So they just need the support, and we send them information. A lot of people just, you can imagine, when you find yourself in this position, no one's really prepared for, like, what do I do now? And you're like, who do I call? I mean, how do I take care of, bank accounts, or, just like things that people don't typically think of. And because it's so sudden, oftentimes you weren't prepared for it. It's one thing if someone is dying and you can kind of prepare for it, but this is, it's not the same thing. So what happens is people are kind of left with picking up the pieces. I mean, even literally, the scene itself, if it happened in someone's home, can be clearly traumatic and devastating to family members to have to deal with it. They don't even know, who do I call? What do I do? I don't know what to do with this. And you can imagine the desperation of folks when they're in this position.
So it sounds like you guys are able to walk family members through the processes and the different steps from A to Z in
Pretty
regards
much.
to, okay.
Yeah, we really, that's our purpose. Really is to link people to other services and get them to the people they need to get to and hold their hands through the process.
And on that note, I know we were talking about it a little bit before we got on, but you were telling me about Broward Connections. Can you give a little bit of insight what that is and how your organization has facilitated that?
Okay, so I know this is backwards. So if you get a mirror and put it up to your screen, you can read it. It says Broward Connections, or it says connections, and it's a guidebook, and I'll just, again, it's backwards, so I apologize for that. But you flip through it, and it's all of the services throughout Broward County that provide behavioral health services, substance abuse, child care needs, A to Z. And there's also a website, a link, and it's called browardconnections.org. Again, that's also in the chat. It's a live link that you could go into, and let's say you wanted more information on Smith Community mental health, for example. You could look up Smith. It's by alpha order. It's also, we do it by service delivery. So if you were looking for something, I don't know, medication, or you needed information on drop-in centers, there's like a cross-reference guide within the thing. And it's all live links. So you don't have to go back out and say, okay, now I need to write the number down and go someplace else. You could do a live link, and it'll feed you right to, my example, Smith Community Mental Health, to get more information, and it'll take you right to their website. We do put that out annually. We have hard copies of it here at the office, and our first responders come by here all the time looking for books, because they have them in their police cars with them, or the fire department guys will come by and say, hey, you got any more of those connections books? Because they'll bring in one, this one is pristine. This is all like, it's torn up, it's
Tabbed up.
marks, and it's, but they use them because they're really critical guides for them and
No,
for anyone.
It's amazing to have it all in one place, so you're not kind of struggling, calling around, trying to figure out where to get this information.
Right.
So
the thing is, people don't know what they need until they need it.
Mhm.
And so when you have that conversation, I'm sure as attorneys, it's the same thing. When someone sits down with you and you start describing, well, this is what we're going to do, and this is what we need to do, I'm sure they look at you and say, I had no idea. Like, I didn't know I could do all those things. I didn't know there was services for this, or service for that, or support for this, or this branch does this, or so on. So it's like anything else. And if you don't know it, you don't know it until you need it, and then you find out all kinds of information.
And then, and it's all in one place now, so that's perfect.
Yeah.
I did want to quickly touch on how is it going with COVID-19? I know with the Art Center, you're talking about having that social engagement. How does that work? Are your offices open currently, or has anything changed?
Yeah, so I mean, we were in the lockdown for a good period of time, and the primary purpose of the Nine Muses Art Center is social connectedness. So it's not really the art. I mean, the art we do, and it's run by artists. It's not run by clinicians. It's run by artists. So everything from painting to sculpture to playing music to learning to play guitar or piano or sing or do poetry, like anything that's connected to the arts. So that's the medium. The purpose is to connect people to one another. So through this whole pandemic, I don't even need to say the words. We all know it. We are human beings, and by nature, and we are wired to be socially connected. So we have reopened on a very limited basis, but we expect by the middle of June we will be fully reopened to take people, back in. The kind of interesting thing that happened with going remote with everything is we taught classes online, and we would put out packets of supplies for people to swing by and pick them up, so they get art supplies and bring them home, and then work with their art instructor online. We actually reconnected with people, or connect with people all over the country who found out about it. So we had people in Texas, we had people in California, we had people who lived here at one point, but moved to a northern part of the state and were out of the area, and they were able to reconnect with us. So it really was a lifeline for them. And we had done virtually all of our services virtually, but now we're coming back to doing them in person. And like anything else, it's been, the whole pandemic has been a challenge for everyone. And in fact, I have to remind my staff and myself, hey, we're human too, and it's okay to recognize that the stress is getting to you. And it's interesting, and I don't mean to go off track with this a little bit, but we had a thing with BSO came by here earlier this week, I think Tuesday or Wednesday, and it was like something that they wanted to put together. It was like a small division. They said, we'd like to jam with your musicians, meaning our clients. and we put that together. So some of these guys came in, and it's funny because here's a saxophone player wearing a gun, and he was a great saxophonist. And then we had a guy who was a vocalist who sang beautifully, and a guy on bass guitar who was like undercover, so you couldn't take pictures of him. I mean, it was really cool. And they were playing with people that who've gone through the legal system, right? Who've been arrested by police officers. Now they're playing music with them. It was the most awesome experience for everyone. And just tell you this one little story that one of the police officers talked about his dad who died by suicide 3 years ago. And you could hear a pin drop in the room. We had BSO officers there, and these, they're like tough guys, right? So he's talking about the loss of his dad by suicide, and it got so quiet and so intense because the poor man he was crying. He was like, I've never told another soul this information. And he used that place where he felt safe and comfortable enough to put that out there. I mean, it was a powerful, powerful moment. So it doesn't matter what your profession is or whether you wear a uniform or you're in the field or whatever. We all have our stuff. Yeah. I can guarantee you there's someone on this group right now or that will be watching this that has suffered a loss of someone by suicide. I guarantee it. There's no question about it. The statistics are this: 1 in 5 adults will be diagnosed with a mental illness in their lifetime. If I were to tell you, Victoria, they got this new lottery, and they guarantee 1 in 5 people win $5 million. Would you go buy a lottery ticket?
Yes.
You'd be like, it's a no-brainer. Yet when it comes to mental health, we're like, no, that ain't me. It doesn't impact me. And yet we stigmatize it. We talk about it like it's them. It's that other person. It's that other family. They got that crazy kid, or we don't think of it in terms of it's probably embedded in our own experience, in our own families. So
it affects us all. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it really does.
I know. I think that was beautifully said, though. I think that we often forget that we're all wearing these caps or these labels, but like you said, police officers coming together and just playing music or working through a medium to kind of get in touch with everyone and just remember our human side of everything. So thank you for sharing that story. Paul, is there anything you want to add before we jump off?
No, I think, I love talking to groups and having the opportunity to talk about what we do. And I think, if there's ever an opportunity to kind of, even if there's a company out there that says, hey, you know what, we'd like to have a talk about stress and trauma and what that impact is. And I'll tell you one last story, because it was with this BSO officers, and we said they were talking about, because they wanted like a trauma thing. So we talked about that, and we talked about stress. And one of the things that, when most people, when they think of stress, they think, well, like you're driving in your car and it's like, I can't stand the traffic. It's driving me crazy. And people don't use the directionals. I mean, that's one of my buckets. But anyway, so, and that's what you get stressed about. But what most people don't realize, that stress that all of us go through, all of us, produces a biochemical reaction in our brain, cortisol, adrenaline. That's why, when you're really pressured and you're moving around all over the place and all of a sudden you realize, I just did all these things and I don't remember what I was doing half the time. That's because there's a physical reaction to it. So some people get off on it because they're like adrenaline junkies, right? They just love that thing, but at the end of the day or at some point, it drains you. And the reason why it does that is because it's stressing your body. So if nothing else, be aware of what the impact is on your body when cortisol and adrenaline are pumping through your brain and causing you to kind of really react quickly and do things all over the place. You're causing damage to your body. So cortisol actually opens inflammation panels in your heart, your lungs, your liver, your whole body. So you're actually doing physical damage to your body the more you expose yourself to unrelenting stress. And sometimes we don't know that. We just feel like, stress is just like, if I get away from it, I'm going to be okay. But you've already done damage to your body. So it's important to recognize that. And I think that's something that sometimes people don't appreciate what that does to us.
Yeah, I mean, I did not know that's how it worked, physically or in your body. But I think that's important, why we all should take care of our mental health, and why, this month we have been acknowledging Mental Health Awareness Month. So thank you so much for bringing that up. I want to just let everyone know that all the contact information and websites that we've talked about today will be posted in the chat. Thank you, Paul, for joining us today, and thank you everyone for tuning in and watching Fridays at Noon with Fridays with Friends. Please remember to like and follow us on Facebook and YouTube at Coast to Coast Legal Aid for other important updates. We are live every Friday at noon to bring updates and information about local service providers in Broward. And I thank you guys for joining us today.